This topic is about transitions back to school for students after a brain injury. During the rehab process, I think transitions are some of the most critical times, and those can be the transition from an inpatient setting to an outpatient setting, but even more critical are the times when a student returns back to home from therapy and resumes school. I think that often for students that's a time that's pretty exciting, and it's relieving to get out of the rehab setting and to go back to real life. But for most students, it's also an anxious time, and for their parents, it's a time of worry and concern about going back and being able to handle all of the things that will be needing to be dealt with in the school setting. I think that anything that professionals within the rehab setting or within the school can do to communicate with each other is critical at this period. There are many, many changes as students transition, and I think students are different than they were obviously before they had their injury. So as they go back, they are a different person than they left. And part of that is that they've experienced a medical event that's very unusual for someone their age. They're also in a constant state of change because they're in that first time period when there's a lot of recovery to occur. And so that the student that returns the first day of school may be quite different from 3 months later, and everything about what happens at school needs to be adjusted accordingly during that rehab process. It can also be frustrating because the process is months and sometimes years to go through the entire recovery process, and that can be stressful for everyone involved. Students have also undergone a very disruptive and sometimes very traumatic time period, and so again there are some emotional adjustments that have to occur. And some of the changes that occur can be very dramatic and very noticeable to everyone, and some are very subtle changes that most people won't notice, but the student, their family, and some of the teachers and friends close to them will. The research shows us that initially students and their families are very focused on the physical aspects of recovery. They want to improve their walking, they want to improve their fine motor skills for writing. They want, if there's any trauma that shows from a physical appearance, they want those things to be the focus of their treatment. But the other thing the research shows is that as a certain number of months go by, the focus changes, and families and the student often are more concerned with the behavioral changes, the cognitive and communication changes that occur with a brain injury. And they may want to work more on those things now that some of the physical things have been taken care of. As students return to school, they often need accommodations to be able to return and put their best foot forward to go back to the academic environment. Possible classroom accommodations for students with traumatic brain injury would include having additional time to complete assignments, having extra or extended breaks because fatigue is a factor, being able to provide instructors' notes and outlines or study guides, providing a note taker, allowing recording of lectures and instructions, allowing written instruction and clarification for assignments as needed, giving them an opportunity to use a laptop, have preferential seating, and for students that are returning to high school, having the quantity of work reduced. Students either in the high school or elementary school. In college, a student has to complete all the assignments that everyone does in school. But for high school and elementary, there can be some reduction if it is too difficult for the student to complete everything. The next slide will show some test accommodations that a student with a traumatic brain injury might benefit from. Those might include allowing more time to complete their test, being able to provide a quiet individual environment to minimize their distractions, allowing oral exams instead of written if writing is difficult, providing multiple choice option instead of written longer answers, allowing the student to clarify or explain their responses on exams if their thought processes are not as organized in their writing as they'd like, permission to use a calculator, permission to use dictionaries or other reference materials, and if 2 exams are scheduled on the same day, allowing the student to have a reschedule of 1 exam, so there's a little bit of extra time for them to be able to prepare for each individual exam. Within the public school system, a styled study team or the IEP team can work with the recommendations that have come from the rehab team to develop an educational plan that's both individual and allows the student to have as many accommodations as they need to be able to be successful. And I think it's important for people to realize that because that student is changing, it's possible for the team then, as the student improves in certain areas, to be able to modify those strategies and to eliminate them if along the way they've improved some skills and they no longer need those supports. So I hope this helps in being able to understand how transitions work and to encourage everyone to communicate as a whole team for the benefit of the student.
Brought to you by the Brain Injury Alliance of Montana and the Department of Health and Human Services.